Nice.
All right. All right. So how's the week been?
Pretty good. Um, Not much different. I have a tournament this weekend up in San Jose. So I'm just getting ready for that.
Hmm.
Um, but it's nice. I don't really have to cut that much weight.
Yeah,
Um,
that's a relief as well.
yeah. So I've just been chilling basically. I mean, training hard, but still eating and whatever. So yeah. Yeah,
That's
it's
good.
nice.
Yeah. So what do you want to talk about for today?
This is an interesting one. So someone commented, um, this one of my friends who competes a lot, he goes to SDSU.
Okay.
He commented as a joke, he said, you should ask Doc um about, and then he put a snowflake emoji. And snowflake emoji, usually people use that as like cocaine.
Uh-huh.
So
Uh-huh.
I was thinking, oh, like, huh, that'd be a funny joke. But also that made me think like, what if people are using like, I don't know, like whatever drugs they use to party recreationally, like for example, that I thought of like Craig Jones. Like that's gotta mess you up for like competition. But then also I wanted to ask you about like marijuana and how that can actually be used for like recovery and stuff. So
Yeah. Yeah.
yeah.
So it's interesting. So let's start with marijuana. So cannabis, marijuana, um, there's a lot of people that smoke before training. And I understand why, because it gets you in a certain headspace. You are relaxed. And, particularly marijuana affects people differently. So some people need to be like hyper focused in order to perform. And some people need to be relaxed because they're already kind of too hyper, and it kind of brings them down, and it just makes it so that they can be present and they can just roll and kind of flow. Um, so I find that really interesting. Like I remember going to tournaments and smelling some ganja around, and someone would walk by or whatever, and if someone smokes a lot or um, if they're doing edibles, then when you sweat, that oil comes out, so you can really smell it, especially on certain people's geese. Um, Now afterwards, I think it's really good for recovery. Um, I went through a period where I had entered this inflammatory cycle, and I started using CBD and just a touch of THC. And it was as if like my receptor, so a lot of people don't know this, but you have cannabinoid receptors throughout your brain and throughout your body. So this is something that humans have evolved with. Like humans in this plant and humans in other plants have evolved together. Um, and it completely broke the inflammatory cycle. So it took a little while, but I could feel the inflammation slowly going down and down and down. So, that's one reason why a lot of athletes, not just jujitsu, but years ago, there was some controversy because a number of NFL players and NBA players, especially a lot of NBA players too, um, use marijuana. And it's just this, it helps with the inflammation. So, yeah, that's a good start. I think have I known people using cocaine? I don't think so.
Yeah, I didn't think so
I don't.
either.
And I wonder if some of it is because it's expensive. I wonder if some of it just puts you in the wrong mind frame where you're like, I could just imagine someone being just like hyper focused and not being able to see outside of that one thing that they're focusing
Mhm.
on, which could potentially get them in trouble because you're not seeing the alternatives. You're not You're not being flexible in your thoughts and in your game plan. Um, I also would think long term use of cocaine and rolling would be dangerous, particularly for the heart. Um, Now, this goes way back. This goes way back to college basketball. And I remember seeing this report. I want to say it was Georgetown University. And some of their players had admitted to using cocaine during it was the NCAA championship. I don't know if it was the championship game or if it was a series of their games. Um, but I just thought that was fascinating. But again, there's risk, particularly with cocaine because of the heart. And there was this again is before your time, but there was a incredible basketball player named Len Bias, and he actually died on the court. And with autopsy, I think they found that he had cocaine in his system, but he also had this cardiac abnormality that made it such that he was even more at risk if he was using because of the way his heart was structured.
That kind of on the same kind of train of thought, this reminded me of um like nicotine too, because
Uh-huh.
right now like Nikki Ryan, a lot of like jujitsu guys are like big proponents of Zins and like nicotine
Mm-hmm.
pouches.
Mm-hmm.
And they say that it really helps them focus and stuff. Like I know
Yep.
some people I train with are definitely proponents of that, and they say it helps with productivity, focus. They kind of treat it similarly to caffeine. So,
Yeah.
do you have any insight in that?
Yeah. So nicotine is an excellent nootropic. It does help with concentration. Um, I've actually experimented with that, not with rolling, but with work. So in clinic, sometimes just before the clinic day, or like let's say it was halfway through, I would use a sublingual spray. Now you do have to be careful because people that have histamine issues. So if you have allergies, and with histamine, it's not just your lungs. It could be your gut. It could be your skin. It could actually be your brain. So people that have histamine issues, certain allergies, if they're using nicotine regularly, they might actually exacerbate some of their allergic symptoms because it's going to help release histamine, and histamine is involved in most all of the allergic and or autoimmune issues. Um, but I think so. I like it when people experiment because you never know like what you're going to find. And even if you try something and you're like, hey, it's not for me, at least you know what it feels like. And it might be something that you return to in the future, or you might use it in a different aspect of your life. I'm not saying that for cocaine necessarily. So when it comes to like marijuana, I tend to like the things that are more on the natural side that kind of grow out of the earth, right, or some kind of fungus or something like that. So when it comes to marijuana, when it comes to nicotine, I'm like, why not? Now, if you're going to smoke cigarettes, I don't know about that because there's so many toxins and poisons. You're trashing your lungs. You just why go that route? Um, but if you're doing pouches, they make these little toothpicks. Not that you're going to roll with those, but you could have that on as you're going to practice. Um, and the sprays, super convenient, not that expensive. I think I was getting mine on eBay because it can be hard to find in certain places. Um, but yeah, I think that's another one that's worth
Hmm.
a try.
And then also, the biggest one, like caffeine. So I drink a cup of coffee every morning. Usually a decent amount of time after wake up, probably like an hour at the earliest after I wake up. Um it makes me feel great in the morning, you know, and
Yeah.
I think a lot of people share that sentiment, but also sometimes I worry because I think like maybe I'm building up my caffeine tolerance too high, and so then I'll take like a week it ultimately ends up to be like a few day break, and then I'll go back to drinking coffee. Um, but I wanted to ask, are there any disadvantages to regular caffeine use and building up a caffeine tolerance? Because I know that there definitely are advantages to having caffeine. Like there's not
Yeah.
many like negative health aspects. What are your thoughts on that?
I think everyone has a certain caffeine limit. Um, so what I mean by that is for some people, they can drink as much caffeine as they want. They can drink caffeine with dinner. They can have a coffee before bed and they're still going to go to sleep. And then there's other people who they have one cup of coffee and they're just wired. Their nervous system is frazzled. Um, this kind of shows the individuality that we all have when it comes to certain substances. So moderation is what's key. If you train with caffeine, then it means you need to compete with caffeine because you would be completely different as far as how your brain is firing and more than likely how you're going to feel. So you want to be consistent with that. Um, there's also genetic SNPs that people have for caffeine, and there is genetic variation. So I can't make a blanket statement about how caffeine is going to work for everyone because it's going to work so differently. For you, what I would suggest is you just keep it moderate. If you are used to having, 1 cup in the morning, then continue to do that. If you want, every once in a while, you take a break. And then when you go back after taking that break, that first cup is going to be a great cup. Um, and it could be that you kind of time that with some of your competitions or certain trainings as well.
Mm.
But
Yeah,
yeah, go
I've
ahead.
done that in the past, to where like the day before a tournament I don't have coffee, and I definitely feel really, really good at the tournament when I do have that caffeine. Like I have a friend who actually is a really high level competitor and he trains at Kyotera Academy up in the Bay Area. Um, but he doesn't his caffeine intake is crazy. It's he does it to where I think like two probably like 2 days out of the week, he just overloads with caffeine. Like he has a bunch
Hmm.
of caffeine, and then the rest of the week he just doesn't have any caffeine. And on those 2 days, usually, I think he those are the days he's like rolling hard, or going to the gym and lifting hard. But he uses caffeine pills, and he uses those before competition.
Hmm.
And so I actually use caffeine pills before some competitions. Like if I feel great without the caffeine pill, then I won't have it. But you
Yeah.
know, it's difficult sometimes because I'll have to wake up at 4:30 or 5 and then
Yeah.
drive for
You
a
got to
few
drive.
hours and
Yeah.
then so I did definitely when I do have that caffeine pill, it really helps. Really
Hmm.
helps.
Hmm. And this is something like for people that are going to try this, you want to make sure that you try this with training first. Like, I would never do something new um, during a competition. You want to see how you feel with it. You want to make sure like, does this affect your bowels? Are you going to have to run in the bathroom? Is it going to change how you urinate? And I mean, it sounds kind of silly, but I mean, the last thing you want to do is have diarrhea before a competition. You're warming up, and the next thing you know, you're running back and forth to the bathroom. Um, Caffeine pills, coffee. I mean, it's funny because you see so many people with their Starbucks just nailing their drinks, their coffees, whatever it is. It's got caffeine in it um, during tournaments, and So I don't actually drink coffee. I have it every once in a while, like if I'm traveling and I go somewhere and I know the coffee's really good. So for me, if I had it, man, I would probably just be like, woo, just completely wired. And, so I don't know if that would be something that would be helpful for me. So for me, I would experiment with those caffeine pills, start with a low dose and experiment with training or with competition training to see how I would like it before trying that for a competition.
Yeah, that definitely is a good point. Yeah, when I first started like having them, I made sure to try it at a hard practice before I competed
Yeah,
because I definitely share that same sentiment. Like I did not want to be trying something new the day of the tournament and then like
yeah,
having, I don't know, whatever go wrong.
yeah, yeah.
But yeah.
So one other thing we haven't talked about are hallucinogens. So
Oh.
I've had people ask me, and I've trained with folks who were microdosing, and I've also trained with folks who were just on shrooms, just booming. And I mean, and it, I, I haven't tried that. I would actually think it would be a lot of fun. Especially if you're like with your friends, with your training partners. You're going to have like some really good grind, some good food right afterwards. Um, but for the people that were microdosing, so for those of you who don't know, so microdosing is usually when you're taking either LSD or ground up mushrooms, psilocybin, and you're taking a very small dose. And the dose is small enough that you're not really going to hallucinate. But what you can feel sometimes is it helps you focus. Sometimes it actually changes your vision so that it becomes sharper. And sometimes it can actually change your hearing so it's more acute. And then other things that people will report is just a better tactile sensation. So, like years ago, all of these like tech bros, these tech guys in Silicon Valley, it came out that like they were microdosing and doing really well, right? Because now their focus or concentration. Um, for some people, it can actually help with lifting um, some aspects of depression. And for some people, it can help, but some people they can feel a little bit more anxiety. So just depends on the individual. Um, so that's the microdosing, and then just full on booming. Let's say you pop a couple caps, then you know 45 minutes later, an hour later, and yeah, I could just see it on their face. I could see their eyes, their pupils were huge. And a lot of laughter, but people just really getting in the flow, like feeling their bodies and closing their eyes and just really having more of like the tactile kinesthetic sense of what's going on with the mat and with their training partner and with their own body and such. And so I'm sure there was like a feeling of like oneness at some point, probably when they're like choking someone out, just before they tapped. But um, so that's another one. And again, I'm not giving medical advice here, but experiment.
Yeah, that's great. I had no idea that people microdose with LSD. Like, is
Yeah,
that's
yeah,
crazy.
yeah, yeah.
The
And
the
so,
what were you gonna say?
what were you gonna ask? Go ahead.
Oh, I was just gonna say like the mushrooms sound it's pretty normalized, I would think, like the microdosing, but yeah, the LSD is just sounds crazy.
So, and again, it's taking a small enough dose that you're not hallucinating, but you are feeling some of the more like hyper focused effects. And then I'm trying to think, is there anything else? Um, yeah, I've there's been a couple guys who've come in that had been drinking, which you're not supposed to. Um, or I could, like, for an early morning practice, I don't know why they just didn't sleep in. Um, but I could smell the alcohol just
Hmm.
kind of pouring off of them. Um, yeah, I think that's it. That was four, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think that was like kind of like, yeah, stimulants, and then like what's the opposite of stimulant?
Depressant.
Like, yeah, depressant. Okay, yeah. Okay. But a little bit of a gear shift. Something that I
Mm-hmm.
was thinking about recently was I was talking with an older, not older, but like, like mid 40s black belt. He's a dad. But he's been training for a long time. And he was saying that when he was my age, like in his 20s and a blue belt, he thought like and I'm sure a lot of people have thought this too, but you could walk into a room and look at anyone and be like, yeah, I could beat anyone up here. Like I'm the baddest in the room right now. And you'd walk down the street and be like sizing up guys, be like, yeah, dude, I'm a blue belt. Like I know how to armbar someone, right? And just thinking that like you kind of want to get into a fight. But he was saying like as he's gotten better at jujitsu and as he's spent so many hours on the mat,
Yeah.
that that's kind of that feeling has like gone down to now where he's like, I mean, not only does he have a family, have a career, and have things to lose, but he's also just like, I just don't want to get into a fight at all. Like, what if they're better? Like he just knows so many more things, and
Yeah.
is he realizes that there are so many more considerations. Um, I mean, I kind of just answered my own question, but what are your thoughts on that? Like that that kind of decrease in bravado as you spend more time on the mats.
Yeah. So I think there's a couple things going on. So, and you mentioned them. There's his more time on the mats, and there's more time of him maturing, and he's got more to lose. So he's got a family, he's got a career. So, yeah, I totally identify with that. So for me, I didn't start until I was, oh man, I was in my 40s
Oh
when
man.
I started. Um, so so what I've learned, I would say, like, if I could just start with like the biggest lesson is you don't know who you're dealing with. And so there are there are people walking around that look like the biggest nerds that will murk you, and you just have no idea. You have no idea. And most people are like, "Oh, I can tell. I can look at their ears. You know, I can look at their hands and their knuckles." There's some folks, they have small ears, and or they wear ear protection, so the cauliflower ear isn't going to be a giveaway. Or you have folks whose hands, they take care of their hands, you know, or the way their game is, they're not going to get those calluses. Um, and you know, his focus was on jujitsu, but now we've gotten to a point where there's been this evolution in martial arts where there's so many people who have grown up learning how to fight and learning MMA essentially. So they've got a ground game, they've got a stand-up game, they've got a takedown game, and it's not all just jujitsu. You know, you got to get close to someone in order and take them to the ground in order for jujitsu to work. But like, what if someone is just this incredible striker, and you might be thinking of their hands, and the next thing you know, you've got a foot coming to your chin that you never even saw, and it's lights out. Um, so, you know, egos aside, I also think it's really important that you use your brain. Like, that's your biggest weapon. And sometimes running away is the best thing. Sometimes diffusing the situation is the best thing. And sometimes, you know, if someone's just going to jaw off, let them jaw off. You know, it's just pretend like you don't know him, you're never going to see him again. And I mean, it could be embarrassing, but the idea of hurting yourself because of something that's silly, as long as no one is going to be threatened, no one's getting stabbed or shot or whatever, some horrible outcome. If it's just words, then walking away for sure is going to be one of the best things. But man, in this area, because I mean, we're from California, you have no idea who trains, and I see it all the time because like, especially when I surf or when I'm somewhere, I'll see guys. I'll be like, hey, what's up? And I know that guy trains, or I'll see like a certain shirt. Um, or there's a kind of a walk that I see certain dudes do, and I'm like, oh yeah, that guy definitely trains. But other people can't tell that, and so and for me, I'm like, oh, that would be a horrible mistake to make, and especially when someone is in shape and they've just they've got good technique and they're strong. Oh my God, that would be brutal for someone to walk in to something like that.
Yeah, I feel like there are just so many variables in real life that like jujitsu, like a lot of time on the mat does not equal, yeah, I could fuck someone up in real life at a
No.
bar. It's like, no, there's like concrete and tile and hardwood floor is not a
Yes.
mat.
Yes.
And
Yeah.
so it's
There's
just like,
glass, and
exactly.
there's the person's friends, right? Because like with jujitsu, we're on the mat and we're rolling, but like in a fight, usually a fight will go to the ground. But what if someone's friend jumps in and just kicks you in the head? Or what if his girlfriend is drunk and she takes a glass and smashes it over you? I mean, there's a whole host of things that are all these different variables that you cannot account for. Um, and if we rewind the clock, so for me, when I was in was I was in medical school, so I was practicing this type of kung fu, and then I remember watching the UFC, and I was like, what is this? And I was talking with my instructor, and he was like, man, that was incredible, because like the kind of kung fu I was practicing, there was some ground game and there was some takedowns. So the that first school was in Torrance, which was near one of the hospitals where I was doing my training. And I wanted to actually go to the school. Looking back, I'm glad I didn't, because it was just so many like, macho man, huge dudes, and they were just going hard like all of the time. And for me, I'm a smaller dude. I probably would have gotten hurt. Um, but back then, if you knew jujitsu, you were a blue belt, you probably would have destroyed most anyone because no one knew the art. Like UFC was brand new. Like those concepts were brand new to the United States. You fast forward, we're almost 30 years later, and jujitsu is a common name. It's a common concept. You have kids classes, right? I mean, you've got people who have grown up starting jujitsu at 5, 6, and 7 years old, and now they're adults. They've been training their entire life. So it's a very different landscape now. Very different.
Yeah. Yeah, I can't imagine what it would be like to like walk into a gym in those like the Gracie when they made those home videos and then they just like walk in and be like, I want to challenge you. Like that's crazy to me. That's crazy that that happened.
Yeah.
'Cause like
Yeah.
imagine something like that happening now. Like you just get looked at and like we know jujitsu works. You don't have to prove it to us. Like
Oh man. Yeah. Different world now. Totally
yeah,
different world.
I mean, like, yeah, I think it's cool that that's kind of the story of how jujitsu like blew up in the United States with the UFC and the like marketing that the Gracie family did, but
It was
it's
brilliant.
just yeah, it's like looking back at it, it's just so outlandish. Like it's crazy.
Yeah. Yeah.
But have you read Breathe by Hickson Gracie?
No, I haven't.
Oh, it's super good book.
Yeah.
Definitely
Is it
recommend it. Yeah.
is it something that is like it goes through the timeline? Is it more of like a historical read?
Yeah. Yeah, it's mostly it's mostly an autobiography about Hickson Gracie,
Hmm.
but through his life you just learn a lot about yeah, just that era and
Hmm.
how jujitsu was like diffused into the United States. So,
And the world. I mean,
yeah.
it's almost like, if you can do it in the United States, you can do it anywhere in the world. Oh, so I've got one last question for you, which is, since I started in my 40s, what was it like for you to start when you were a kid?
That's a
What
great
was that
question.
experience like?
So when I started, I was in middle school. I think I was around 10 or 11 years old. Um, I mean, I remember going to class, going to jujitsu class. Remember the first time I went, I rolled with this girl named Kayla, who I also went to high school with. She was super nice. But when I was a white belt, she was like a yellow belt. So she had already been doing it for, I don't know, a couple years.
Okay.
Um, and Kayla like quickly passed my guard and mounted me and then like cross collar choked me. And like I wasn't upset by it, but I was just like, oh, that was cool. And then after the class, I'd gotten beat up, yeah, like by her and then by the other kids in the class. Master Canoe came up to me and he was like, "Great job today. Sometimes you're the hammer and sometimes you're the nail." And so I was like, okay. I was just a little kid. I was like, all right. But yeah, I mean I enjoyed training as a kid. I don't like we didn't train super hard, which I thought was a great call.
Hmm.
I think yeah, with kids you kind of want to, especially younger ones, you want to like guide them in through like fun games, like
Yeah.
because they're not really going to. I mean, kids can be smart, but they're not really going to fully conceptualize most of the intricacies and the technique. Um, but I mean, they can do an arm bar and they can choke someone out and they can play dodgeball and have fun playing dodgeball too.
Yeah.
So but yeah, I had a good time. I don't think I was super into it, especially during those younger years. I would just go because it was something to do and um I had already like signed up and yeah, it was fun. I remember I competed once at an in-house tournament and
Okay.
I just did terribly and afterwards I was crying and they
Oh.
gave me I got like last place and they gave me a like a part they gave everyone medals. They gave me a medal and I was just like I don't want this medal and I threw it in the car. And then yeah, I never competed again after that until I started back up when I was graduated from high school. But I
Hmm.
do also remember I stopped jujitsu after about maybe 2.5 years of doing it, and that's when I started high school wrestling my freshman
Wrestling. Yeah.
year.
Yeah.
And I went into wrestling thinking that I would like have a leg up because I knew jujitsu, or I thought I knew jujitsu, but I didn't really. But I went in there to my first practice and I just got whooped by this guy named Isaiah Graves, who's one of my good friends on my wrestling team. Um, but yeah, he just worked me, and I was like, damn, my jujitsu is not holding up here. Because also it's just a whole different intensity
Com-
level.
yes. Yeah.
Yeah, I was not used to going hard in jujitsu at all. And the wrestling guys are
They
like
go.
wrestling guys, so it's like I'm gonna fight
Yep.
you.
Yep.
But but yeah, I'm
Yeah.
super glad I did jujitsu because I definitely do have muscle memory. Like when I started back up again in college, I remembered a lot of this stuff and I remembered a lot of the concepts. Um, and even now, when I learn things that are new, some of the stuff I'm like, oh wait, I think I also learned that when I was a little kid. I just
Hmm.
forgot it, but I'm kind of relearning it, but also I still have some of that muscle memory.
And
So
it's somewhere back in there.
yeah,
Yeah.
yeah, I have to really dig down, but I mean, once I do the same motion with my body, it all comes flooding back in. It's like that sensory memory stuff.
Hmm.
Um, so yeah, overall, definitely glad I trained when I was younger.
Hmm. And then when you look back, you know, if there's parents that are listening, what advice would you give as far as what you think is a good education? Like, what should they look for to make sure that their kids, for one, are going to be safe, they're not going to get hurt, but they're also going to have like a positive, nurturing environment? Because not everyone is going to compete. You know, for most kids, it's going to be something that's going to keep them active. It's going to keep them social, and they're going to have fun. But what advice would you give parents as far as what to look for in a school to ensure that their kids are going to be safe and having fun and learning?
I think I think the main thing, well, besides the school, I think parents definitely want to encourage their kids, but also not push them too hard to do something that the kid doesn't want to do. Because if the kid doesn't want to do something, they're never gonna do it again.
Hmm.
Um, like if I had a really bad experience with jujitsu, which I didn't, like I had a pretty fun experience with jujitsu, then but if I had a bad one, I would definitely have not have wanted to come back to it. Whereas,
Hmm.
in my experience, I came back to it. Um, so yeah, I feel like some parents sometimes can be like super motivated to want to like push their kid to compete, but that's not the answer, really. Like if your kid wants to compete, they're gonna compete. But I think most parents learn that. Um, but in terms of a jujitsu school, I think, hmm, I mean, I think it's pretty intuitive. Like you don't want a head coach or instructors that are like yelling at the kids and like berating the kids when like of course an 8-year-old's armbar is not going to be that good. Like
Right.
you don't want to yell at him for it. But I think as long as the kid is having fun, then that's probably a great fit for that individual kid because so many kids are different. Um, and yeah, like instructors that prioritize like a fun learning experience over um like w like forcing the kids to have perfect technique. Like
Hmm.
that just or forcing the kids to roll as hard as they can. Um yeah, so I think the majority of this what I'm trying to say is just make sure your kid's having fun. Yeah.
That's the priority. Fun.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. Enjoyment and fun and exploration.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's one of the for the parents out there. There's a few sports that I tell people, parents, to get their kids involved in or have them doing, because it helps with the muscle group development. It helps with neuromuscular development. It uses all of the different muscles in the body that you need to use before this window closes, where it becomes harder to develop those and to have the coordination and such. And so, any kind of running sport is great. You need to learn how to swim. It's a life skill, but also the muscles and breathing, and being comfortable in the water, super important. Some kind of grappling, I think, is excellent. Um, there's something unique about being on the ground, and particularly with jujitsu and grappling, you're always having to get a partner, and so you're learning how to socialize. You're learning how to, ideally how to be humble and how to approach people and lots of different people within a short period of time. And the other that I think is excellent is gymnastics, either gymnastics or tumbling or some kind of dance that involves those, because again, you're using different muscle groups, you're working on rhythm. And if you can get those four in, early on in a kid's life, then I think you're setting them up for success inside of their bodies. It's going to allow them to pick different sports and to do very well.
Hmm. What about this could go along with that running sport, but do you think putting your kid in some type of team sport is important as well for like, I don't know, socialization and working with other people?
Yes. So it depends on the kid. So some kids thrive in team sports. Some kids, it's just not for them, and they'll do better in more of the individual sports, or they can be on a team, but it's more of their own motivation. Um, I mean, I like team sports. The first time, well, I used to run, but jujitsu was really for me the first time that I wasn't doing like a team sport. Yeah.
Yeah, I did team sports like my whole life and I kind of liked them, but when I got to wrestling in that like super, I mean, yeah, there's a wrestling team and there's like camaraderie and stuff, but at the end of the day, it's only
It's
you on the
you.
mat.
Yeah,
Yeah.
it's you.
And I just that really worked well for me,
Hmm.
really, because um I felt like there was a lot of pressure taken off my back and I had a lot less anxiety, which is
Hmm.
kind of surprising. But for me, I felt like because in team sports, I would always be scared to let down my team.
Yeah.
And so it would make me kind of freeze up and in like when I needed to make quick decisions, I wasn't able to make those quick decisions. And I still do have those problems in like individual sports. Like I had that problem in wrestling. I still have a little bit in jujitsu, but it's not as bad because I'm not really worried about letting anyone down because at the end of the day, it's only myself on the mat and like there's no like whole group of people who have stake in the match as well. It's just me.
Hmm.
Um, so yeah, and I don't have to put pressure on myself. Yeah.
That's interesting because I kind of feel like I'm the opposite way. When I'm with a team, I don't know. It's weird. I kind of feel like there's support, and I know my role, and I know the other roles. But where I've been struggling, and it's been a while because of COVID, but with individual competitions, I'm psyching myself out because I'm like, it's just me, um, which is very different. I was in clinic yesterday and I met, I don't remember her name. She's local, but she's a sports psychologist. And I'm going to wait to see because I may end up treating her for her knees. But it could be interesting. I'm thinking it could be interesting to have an interview with her because she is a sports psychologist for a lot of Olympic athletes and pro athletes. And just her demeanor, and when we were talking and she was asking me questions about you know PRP and stem cells and exosomes and something called A2M for the joints and cartilage and such. Just the way she was talking, I was feeling very relaxed, and I was feeling like, and I was thinking to myself, yeah, you've been doing this for years. Like she has people fly in from all over the world to study with her because she's that good and she's been doing that. So I think that's a question I might bring up because what you just said about the individual versus the team, my experience is kind of the opposite, and I wonder what meaning that has, and what ideally what the focus would be in order to improve upon that. Because at the end of the day, what ends up happening with most sports when you're at these higher levels is it's mental. That's the thing that really separates, you from the podium or first place from second place. It tends to be, what your internal dialogue, what your thoughts, what your visualization, um, how you're approaching adversity and how you respond when something doesn't go the way that you wanted it to go.
Yeah. Yeah, I don't know. I think I'm definitely in my head a lot. And if there are other people that are mixed into the equation, like for example, a team sport, it just adds so many factors to what I'm thinking about. Like I'm thinking about um not only are they relying on me and I have that extra pressure, but also I'm I'm relying on them, and if they let me down, what if they feel bad? And so
Oh,
that kind of stresses me out as well. But yeah, when it's just me on the mat, I'm like, oh, it's just me. Like I don't have anyone, no one's worrying about me. I don't have anyone, I don't have to rely on anyone except for myself. And it kind of, I mean, maybe it's because I've been doing it for this long and I've been competing like in like wrestling and jujitsu for like 5, 6 years. So I mean, maybe I've developed that, but I really do think I enjoyed individual sports over team sports like from the beginning. So
hmm.
maybe it's just difference in personality traits.
Yeah, yeah. And again, I think it's important that you experiment. You gotta try it all. And it might be that you might try a team sport, you don't like it, but you try a different one and you're like, this is it. This is awesome. And same for the individual sports. Um, I think in terms of like, surfing and tennis and running, uh, jujitsu, boxing, these are all things that it's just you and something else, but it's you. So yeah, but that's a good insight. I'm gonna think about that for a while because that's one of my goals. I think I mentioned that a couple weeks ago, but that's one of the aspects of jujitsu that I like is that it helps me self reflect. Um, I feel as if it helps me get to know myself better, um, for better and worse, right? Because there's always things I always want to improve on myself. And so, in order to do that, you need to really get to know yourself and not just the good qualities. You need to understand like what your fears are, what you're anxious about, what throws you off your game, those kind of things.
Yeah. All right. I gotta
Good,
run
man.
to practice.
Oh man, we talked. We went
We
over.
did, but no, it's not. Yeah, it was a good conversation.
Yeah, that was great. So have a good practice. Good luck in your competition,
Thank you.
and
Thank you.
let's pick up again sometime in May. I will text you.
Yeah,
We can.
yeah, we can coordinate that, but
All right.
for sure. And then also text me your YouTube channel too.
Okay. I will do.
Yeah.
Thanks, man.
All right.
Okay.
See you
You take care.
later.
Bye bye.
You too. Bye.